Welcome back to Communicative English Classroom. In the previous class, we had been talking about the format of news report. Do you remember it? Of course, some of you would. Who can summarize the format of news report now?
Yes, sir. News report has a structure of inverted pyramid. It is divided into three. First one, intro or lead. Second one, details of the news. And the third, what after.
Thank you, Hima. You are good. A news report has the format of an inverted pyramid. It can be divided into intro or lead, details of the news, and what after. Today, let's try our hands in writing for radio. What's the specialty of radio? There are some people who are really fond of radio. At the same time, there are some who think that radio is an outdated medium. What do you say? Is radio an outdated medium? Is it beneficial for you? What's the role of radio after the advent of television? Can you share your views now?
Good morning. Radio is good. It is useful. Now radio is in our mobile. We can hear it when we travel. We can hear songs, news and comedy programs in it. I like to be a radio jockey.
Good observation, Anthony. Radio is a medium that appeals to our ear. So we call it a blind man's friend. But the most important feature of a radio is that we can involve in any other work while we are listening to radio. Imagine you are doing some cleaning work at home, or some agriculture work in the field, or you may be cooking in the kitchen. You can listen to radio without interrupting your work. It is possible because listening is a passive activity, and of course, radio is a passive medium. Now let's listen to a piece of radio news.
Good evening. This is All India Radio. I'm Manoj Singh Rana, and with me is Prashant Kumar Sinha with the evening news. The headlines: Centre to begin free distribution of 75% of total COVID vaccines to all states and union territories from tomorrow. Over 27 crore 66 lakh doses of COVID-19 vaccine administered in the country so far.
Is there any difference between a radio news and a news report you see in newspaper? Of course there is. Though the format is almost same, the style of writing is quite different. There are a few things we should bear in our mind while we write for radio. First one, create an image with a pictorial description. Imagine when you read a newspaper, you can go back to the newspaper whenever you have doubts. Similarly, when you watch television, the visuals are accompanied by audio. But in the case of radio, we have only words. The report writer has to create an image in the minds of the listener with his own words. Pictorial description is a tool for that. What's a pictorial description? You should feel as if you are watching a picture or a live event. Look at the screen. There is a picture given. Look at the picture and see how the reporter makes a pictorial description out of it. The cries of the people reverberated across the piles of debris when a 3-story building collapsed in a densely populated slum area in Mumbai. Now come back to the second point in writing radio text. Use adjectives and adverbs to the maximum. The use of different adjectives and different adverbs helps the reporter to create the pictorial quality in the news. Now the third rule: avoid confusing tones, pauses, and punctuations. A news reporter has to be very careful about unnecessary punctuation marks, whereas a newsreader should be careful about unnecessary pause and breaks. Now, the fourth point, use real life statements in reported form. Let's hear a piece of news now.
WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus in a message congratulated all the signatories of the joint statement.
I would like to thank the permanent missions of Brazil, Georgia, Japan, South Africa, Thailand, and Turkey for organizing this informal session of the General Assembly to recognize health and care workers around the world.
Have you identified the real life statement or real life speech being reported by the newsreader? Of course, it is possible in our headlines also. Nandana, can you repeat these points now?
Create an image with pictorial descriptions. Use adjectives and adverbs maximum. Avoid confusing tones, pause, and punctuations. Use real speech or response in reported form.
That's a great attempt, Nandana. Now, let's change a few sentences into radio text. Look at the screen. The government said the opposition leader had created the problems. This is a very confusing statement. There are a lot of punctuation marks. If it is a printed text, we can understand the meaning looking at the punctuations. But unfortunately, in a radio text, we should understand the meaning just one listening. So, the sentence can be changed into a radio text like this. The government had created the problems, said the opposition leader. Or, you can write another option. The opposition leader said the government had created the problems. Now, the second question. A taxi driver overran a pedestrian. It's really a funny statement. There are a lot of meanings you can imbibe from it. We know that it is about an accident. So we should bring in more details about the accident in the radio text. So the radio text goes like this. In a car accident, the taxi driver overran a pedestrian while he crosses the road. Now the sentence is clear. The third question. Because of the heavy rainfall which poured down yesterday, the city life jammed. Again, a lot of punctuation marks are there which cannot be shown in a radio text. So we have to rewrite the entire sentence. The heavy rainfall caused traffic jam in city yesterday. Now I hope you know the features of a radio report. Now let's move on to a radio bulletin. What's a radio bulletin? A radio bulletin is a bunch of news items aired at a particular news hour from a particular news station. Let us listen to a piece of radio bulletin now.
Good evening. This is All India Radio. I am Valsa Williams and with me is R.S. Raghu with the evening news. The headlines. Country registers significant decline in active caseload and new cases of COVID-19, less than 5,000 cases in 20 states. Over 60,000 cases registered in the last 24 hours, lowest in 75 days. Recovery rate improves to 95.64%. In Asian Cup football qualifiers, last Group E match underway between India and Afghanistan at Jasim bin Hamad Stadium, Doha. And in Euro 2020 today, Hungary faces Portugal and Germany to take on France.
Haven't you heard the bulletin? Could you identify a structure or a format of a bulletin now? screen, here it is. You can see a format of radio bulletin over there. First, a greeting. A greeting can be good morning, good afternoon, or good evening according to the time. The second point, introduction of the news bulletin. Let's hear the beginning of the news bulletin once again.
Good evening. This is All India Radio. I'm Manoj Singh Rana, and with me is Prashant Kumar Sinha with the evening news.
The introduction of a news bulletin includes three things: the introduction of the channel, introduction of the news, and introduction of the newsreader. It can be something like this. This is All India Radio. You are listening to Midday News. I am Arun Malhotra giving you the news. So we have included all the three elements in introduction of the news bulletin. Now comes the introduction of the headlines. Let's listen to the introduction of headlines from a real news.
The headlines: Centre to begin free distribution of 75% of total COVID vaccines to all states and union territories from tomorrow. Over 27 crore 66 lakh doses of COVID-19 vaccine administered in the country so far.
Now the next point is the detailed description of the news. It is accompanied by an occasional reporting, live reporting from the site also. Let's hear a piece of news.
And now the news. The Union government has said India is registering a significant decline in active caseload and fresh cases of COVID-19.
हमारे देश में करीब 9 लाख के करीब ऐसे केसेस हैं जो कि एक्टिव केसेस की दृष्टि में आते हैं, यानी कि हम देखते हैं कि करीब 65 दिनों के बाद देश में एक्टिव केसेस की संख्या में एक और विजिबल कमी आई है.
Now the next point, that is repetition of the headlines before the conclusion of the bulletin. This is a common practice we see in every channel. Now the last point, conclusion of the news bulletin. The conclusion of the news bulletin goes something like this. That's all for now. We shall bring you more updates on today's news at prime time. Till then, goodbye. Now Ansim, can you repeat the format of a news bulletin?
Yes, sir. A greeting, introduction to the news, introduction of the headlines, detailed description of each news, repetition of the headlines before the conclusion of the bulletin.
Thank you, Ansim. You have done it well. Now let's write a news bulletin based on the pieces of news given there. Look at the screen. India to build up relationship with neighbors. COVID-19 death toll decreases. Higher secondary examination begins in March. And in sports, India takes on Australia in Melbourne Test. You may prepare a radio bulletin and send it to your communicative English teacher. Dear children, our next topic is quite interesting. It is something connected to radio. It is something connected to sports. It is something that Shaiju Damodaran popularized in Kerala. Can you say what it is? No? Then listen to it. You would definitely say.
Ronaldo വരുന്നു ആഫ്രിക്കയ്ക്ക് എടുക്കാൻ. Ronaldo! നിങ്ങൾ ഇത് കാണുക. Why this man is called a genius? ഫുട്ബോൾ ലോകത്ത് എന്തുകൊണ്ടാണ് ജീനിയസ് എന്ന വിളിപ്പേരിന് പോർച്ചുഗലിന്റെ പ്രിയപുത്രൻ അർഹനായത് എന്ന് അടിവരയിട്ട് തെളിയിക്കുന്ന ഗോൾ ക്രിസ്ത്യാനോ റൊണാൾഡോ ഓവർ ദ മൂൺ. It's 3-3 in Sochi. വന്നിട്ടെന്ന് சொல்லு.
Now you know what is our next topic. Yes, it's commentary. If you have a good voice and a flair for language and you are interested in speaking, you can be a good commentator. Earlier, commentary was a sole property of radio. But when sports commentary came into limelight, things have been changed. Nowadays, people sit before the television not only to see the visuals, but also to hear the commentary. Shaiju Damodaran is a champion in it. Now let's discuss what are the salient features of a commentary. First one, a pictorial description. We have already learned what's a pictorial description in radio text. When we think of commentary, what comes to our mind first is the commentary of Nehru Trophy boat race. People of Kerala felt as if they were watching Nehru Trophy boat race just sitting at home. The backwaters appeared before them. The fleet of boats competing each other headed towards them. The roar of excited onlookers on both the shores they heard. How it was possible? It was made possible because of the pictorial description of the commentators. We know that the use of adjectives and adverbs helps the commentator to give pictorial quality to his commentary. Now the second point, use present tense, short sentences and exclamatory sentences in commentary. A commentator reports what is happening in front of his eyes at the time of speaking. So he uses present tense in his commentaries. The pace of the movement on the ground is reflected in the change of sentences in the commentary. Each move corresponds to each sentence. So when the pace increases, the movement increases on ground. Similarly, exclamatory sentences are the hallmark of a good commentary. A commentator uses them very often. Now the ball goes to Ronaldo. Ronaldo moves with it, and there is a defender, and defender blocks him. Oh no, the ball goes up, and Ronaldo jumps, and it's a goal. What an absolute goal it is! This is how a commentary goes. Now the third point, suspense through sound modulation. When the pace of the commentary is accompanied by the sound modulation, the listener gets the idea that something is going to happen there. A suspense is created. When the sound goes up, he sits on the edge, eagerly waiting for a goal or a hit. Creating suspense with sound modulation is a key to commentary. Now let's hear a piece of commentary.
Boys hit this one, Miles. Great shot. Oh, it's a biggie. Straight over the top. The little man has hit the big fella for six. He's off his size. And he's smashed him down the ground. What a player. What a wonderful player. Sachin Tendulkar wants to win this match.
Now the fourth point, a good introduction and a good conclusion. A good introduction includes the description of the event, where is it taking place, and who is the commentator. A good conclusion can be done with a promise of a future event. You can talk about the commentary of the same event next year, or the commentary of another event next day or next month. These are the features of a good commentary. Now let's get familiarized with a few expressions connected to media. Fly on the Wall. It's a television program in which the people behave normally as if they are not being filmed. Very often, we see these types of programs as fillers in every channel. Infomercial. It's a combination of information and commercial. You know that commercial means an advertisement. So here it's an advertisement which gives you some kind of information about a product. It's a long television advertisement that contains a lot of information and seems like a normal program. Now come to roadshow. Most of you are familiar with it. A series of shows or events that take place in different places around the country for entertainment or in order to give the public information about a product or a company, etc. Mockumentary. A film or a television show made in the style of a documentary to make invented events seem real. It is a mockery of a documentary, so we call it a mockumentary. Now, the reality TV, a television that produces programs about ordinary people who are filmed in real situations rather than actors. The last, news flash, a short news report on radio or television giving the most recent information about an important or unexpected event. Now you know what's the role media play in our life. Let me conclude this chapter going back to the title, Different Media, One Message. We all know that there are a lot of TV channels, a lot of radio stations, and a lot of newspaper firms. Though they report differently, the core of their message should be same in same incident or same issue. But unfortunately, we get different kinds of interpretations on the same issue or same event. Each and every channel distorts the news according to their vested interest. In such a scenario, being the students of communication and media, we should be able to read between the lines and to dissect the news to find out the real truth hidden in it. Saying this, let me conclude this chapter. Goodbye.